Okay, so there's this incredibly high stakes game of chicken playing out in the Middle East right now, and it's a situation that's teetering right on the edge of a truly devastating regional war. The chess pieces are moving, and believe me, the entire world is holding its breath. And you don't have to guess what's at stake. A top Iranian official came right out and said it. This isn't just some political posturing. No, this is a crystal clear signal that the old rules of the shadow war, they're completely out the window. This has morphed into a direct threat that could pull in the entire region and the United States right along with it. So, what does a threat like that actually mean on the ground? Let's unpack it, because the rules of engagement here have shifted in a really dangerous way, dragging this whole conflict out of the shadows and into the open. And here's the bottom line. Iran is basically saying that if there's any direct American military strike on their soil, it will trigger an immediate, all-out conflict. Every American base, every warship, all personnel across the Middle East, they instantly become targets. A very clear line has been drawn in the sand. Okay, so with a threat that direct, how is the U.S. responding? Well, the American military is basically building a massive defensive fortress. And the scale of this thing, it's absolutely staggering. Right now, there is a nonstop aerial supply chain in motion. We're talking about C-17s and these enormous C-5 super galaxies, literally some of the biggest military cargo planes on the planet, flying into the region around the clock. You have to understand, this isn't just a routine deployment. This signals a buildup for a major, sustained military operation. And to really get a sense of what's coming, just look at this number, 300. In a single, recent defensive action, the U.S. fired 300 incredibly advanced, incredibly expensive missiles to protect its allies. That number alone gives you a baseline for the kind of firepower we're talking about, and it's a huge hint at what's at stake in a bigger fight. So the American strategy is to build this multi-layered missile shield. You can think of it like a series of nets. The first one, THAAD, is designed to catch threats way up high in the atmosphere. The next layer, SM-3s, launched from warships, gets anything that slips through. And then finally, you've got this dense network of Patriot missiles as the last line of defense. It's a technological fortress, built for one purpose, to stop an absolute barrage of incoming fire. But, and this is a huge but, this massive defensive effort comes with a crazy high price tag. And I'm not just talking about money. This whole strategy is actually exposing a critical vulnerability, a weak spot that could completely change the strategic picture. The math here is genuinely alarming. That one defensive engagement we talked about, it burned through a quarter, a full 25% of the entire U.S. stockpile of THAAD missiles, and nearly a third of its sea-based SM-3s. These aren't bullets, you know. These are priceless, incredibly hard-to-replace weapons, and they are being used up at a shocking rate. And this really gets to the heart of the problem. Yeah, defense contractors are planning to eventually quadruple the production of these interceptors, but that's years down the road. The reality is, the industrial base just can't replace these advanced weapons nearly as fast as they could be used in a war that could happen, well, today. And experts are absolutely sounding the alarm on this. There is a huge, dangerous gap between what's needed for a war right now and our ability to actually produce the weapons for it. As one analysis put it, a long-term fix won't solve the problem in the next few weeks. You simply can't fight a war tomorrow with weapons you're hoping to build years from now. The problem gets even deeper, believe it or not. The actual raw materials you need to build these advanced weapons, we're talking about rare earth metals, are mostly controlled by a strategic rival, China. And with Beijing already putting restrictions on key defense contractors, the U.S. supply chain has a serious choke point that could get squeezed at the worst possible moment. So when you look at this glaring vulnerability, this super expensive, slow-to-replace arsenal that depends on a rival's resources, it leads you to a really provocative question. What if using up all these priceless weapons isn't just an accident? What if it's actually part of a deliberate, much bigger plan? Some analysts are now floating a pretty controversial theory. They're suggesting this might not be just about containing Iran. Instead, it could be a really complex geopolitical chess move, one designed to completely reshape the balance of power in the Middle East by weakening everybody else. So this alleged strategy, this exhaustion plan, it would work something like this. First, you provoke a conflict that forces both sides to use their absolute best weapons. You basically bleed them both dry. Iran would use up all of its offensive missiles, while the U.S. allies in the Gulf would burn through their defensive interceptors. The end result?
a power vacuum that only one nation is left standing to fill.
But let's follow this train of thought to its most terrifying possible conclusion. What happens if this high-stakes plan, whether it's intentional or not, actually works? What happens if it leads to the complete, chaotic collapse of the Iranian state? This is where the risk just goes off the charts, into a potential nightmare scenario. All eyes would immediately turn to places like the Bushehr nuclear reactor. Now, it's not a weapons facility, but it contains huge amounts of radioactive material. And in the middle of a state collapsing, a place like this becomes a danger that goes way, way beyond any battlefield. A state collapse would be like opening Pandora's box. A strike or sabotage at Bushehr could cause a meltdown, contaminating the entire Gulf. But you know what's maybe even more terrifying? Iran's stockpile of highly enriched uranium. In the chaos, this weapons-grade material could just disappear, stolen by militias, sold on the black market. Who knows? And that right there, that is the trillion-dollar question that keeps security experts awake at night. You see, when the Soviet Union collapsed, there were plans in place to secure its nuclear arsenal. For Iran, no such plan exists. In the fog of war, with a government falling apart, trying to secure that material would be nearly impossible. Which leaves us with a final, chilling thought. In a gambit this big, has anyone truly calculated all the risks?